that was helpful. And
were they to Jewish or Gentile families?
This is to Jewish families.
Was there a moment when you had an epiphany, when you knew that service was going to be a major aspect of your life? If so, please describe that for us.
I think my process was, when I first began to study and certain ideas really grabbed me, that the most vital thing I could do in my life was to help other people who were created in the image of God, make a better world.
And this is back when you're just learning,
even
studying Torah.
Yeah, studying Torah.
Even before you started the Talmud.
Right, even elementary school. I'm watching a few of the rabbis who really embodied that, and how kind they were, and it touched me. So I felt that I could be that way, that there was part of me that was soft and relational. And I wanted to be able to help other people. There was one other time when I was in college, at Yeshiva College, and Dorothy Day and the Catholic Worker Movement came to visit our school. We used to have outside lecturers, and I was very impressed by their dedication, to service, and it seemed such pure work. You didn't have to worry about any theological doctrines. You just go out and you knew that you were doing something pure. They were dedicated to poverty, and they really helped day and night to try to improve society.
Do you have a particular spiritual practice other than the normal 3 times a day prayer that you could share with us?
Meditation, where I learned, first mantra meditation, TM, I had a mantra. Then I meditated with a group called Brahma Kumaris. They were a Hindu group from India, came here, and I met them at once a year in Los Angeles, downtown. There was a day of, I forget the title of it, but some kind of spiritual unification where different religions would come together and they would share their spiritual practices. So I met those people and they brought me into their tent, and it was a wonderful meditation system of guiding yourself up, elevating yourself to the upper world. So I sometimes lead groups doing that, but I try every day to do a 20-minute meditation. I used to be able to do it twice a day.
When you meditate, do you do an empty mind or a focused meditation?
I do a focused meditation with a mantra. I just stick to the mantra and come back to it and sit with it for 20 minutes.
Do you daven 3 times a day?
Yeah, sometimes I'll miss mincha or whatever, but I in the morning it's easier for me to always be there, and it energizes me, especially if I daven with a minyan.
With whom do you daven?
Sometimes I daven 3 times a week at Beth Jacob in Beverlywood, and 2 days a week when I'm at the academy, we have a minyan in the morning.
One of our viewers was so traumatized by their childhood, whether it was our faith practice or some other. May have just have been their parents, but for what they may have had grown up with no faith tradition. But they are hurt. They have a shell of rejection and fear, and if you were to say to them, oh, read this passage from the Bible, or oh, go pray to God, they would just reject you out of hand. They are actively convinced there is no God. Is there a beginner's spiritual practice that you could recommend for such a person that might aid them in softening or breaking the shell of resentment that they have?
If they engage in a social service project, somewhere where they can be giving to other individuals, generally that brings out the God within them. They may not call that God, but the ability to give sort of shifts an awareness that, hey, I am an okay person, and there is the capacity to do good in the world. They once asked Gandhi, do you believe that God is love? And Gandhi said, I'm not sure if God is love, but I know to love is God. If you see a person who's loving, there's something that gets touched in you, So I would enable that person to try to be in an activity where that can be brought out within its own self. Instead of looking for God out there, finding it within.
If you knew that you could not fail, if I were able to issue you a 100% ironclad guarantee of success for your next project, what would you attempt?
I'd attempt some of what I'm doing now, and that is to try to bring religious leaders together to create a strategy where we can impact the world in a positive way, to give hope and faith that things can be done to promote peace between groups who are fighting, to raise the standards of living for people who are needy, to create a consciousness that we're all one and this world can be a blessing if we just put our hands together.
Who are your heroes?
In terms of my teachers, I always was very close to Yitz Greenberg, and I had the dean of my School of Social Work, Bill Rosenthal. These were people who were very authentic, very courageous, very bright, very empathetic, and who got me and who I felt appreciated me, and I really loved to learn from them and to watch them. You know.
What have I neglected to ask you about religion, psychology, your personal motto, anything that you think bears mentioning right now?
I think what's essential is how to impart faith and confidence in people, how to allow people to find themselves, to discover themselves, and I firmly believe that each of us have a specific, unique destiny. So we need to work on that and see what draws us and follow that, have the courage to do that. And we have to create systems that encourage that and support that rather than trying to ram one idea down people's throats or trying to make them conform to the modes of a community that they belong to. So what I would say is, you didn't ask me about what I think, how people grow and change, or how people become the best that they're meant to be. So my answer is to encourage individuality, give them support, and help them imagine that it's possible to achieve.
Thank you so much for taking the time to interview with me.
Thank you. Thank you for your good questions and your attention and your kindness. Thank you.
Thank you so much for taking the time to meet with me, Rabbi. Please tell us your full name, the job you currently hold, and a little bit about how you came to occupy that position.
My name is Rabbi Mel Gottlieb, and I'm currently the president of the Academy for Jewish Religion, California, also the dean of its rabbinical school and its chaplaincy program. I came to this position about 10 years ago because I was invited to teach, and the vision and values of the school were commensurate with my soul's journey, because it was a trans-denominational school which wanted to promote unity amongst the different denominations. It was textually based, and it had a spiritual dimension that's essential for where my talents lie. I'm a therapist as well as a rabbi, so I always like to engage with a psycho-spiritual journey of students and human beings to help them become elevated to their destinies and to reach their potential.
Please tell us a little bit about where you were born, where you grew up, and your family of origin.
I grew up in New York City, in Manhattan, the Lower East Side. My family was Orthodox. My grandparents were very Orthodox, and I grew up in a yeshiva environment with Rav Moshe Feinstein, MTJ. He was the big legalistic decisor of the generation, the halachic authority, and a very spiritual figure. So he had a lot of influence on me. My grandfather also was very spiritual. He was a Torah reader for 30 years at that yeshiva.
Why did you leave an Orthodox environment?
I grew up in a way where I always had a universal feeling for people, though part of my family was Orthodox, part of my family was not, and I loved both of them equally. And some of the messages in the yeshiva, the Orthodox yeshiva, where only the observant should be honored, didn't resonate with my experience. But I remained Orthodox in practice for most of my life. I went up to Yeshiva University, and it was when I graduated and I went to social work school, and I began to understand the importance of affirming one's feelings and being authentic and having integrity. And I had ideas that were sometimes different than the Orthodox teaching, so I began to explore new ways of being Jewish and new ways of being spiritual in the world.
What degrees do you hold?
BA, I have a master's in social work, I have a master's in Jewish philosophy, I have a PhD in depth psychology and mythology. So I'm a clinical psychologist as well as a rabbi, and mainly I've been a professor for many years in my life.
What does trans-denominational mean, and why is that important to you?
You know, my first job was as a Hillel director at MIT and in Princeton, and there I had the responsibility to work with all denominations, with Orthodox, Conservative, Reform, Jews, and non-affiliated. And I realized that each denomination had something very valuable to contribute, and I didn't want to feel limited to one denomination. A Hillel director really has to be pretty universal. That's why I also shifted from solely being Orthodox. So trans-denominational means the ability to affirm all the denominations, to value what they bring, but also not to be locked into one denomination, and also to have the ability to serve those who are not affiliated with any denominations, which is the majority of the Jewish community. So trans-denominational means the desire to reach to all Jews, that we're all a Jewish community, and making that most important, no matter what denomination.
What does psycho-spiritual mean?
Psycho-spiritual means the ability to not just look at the objective facts and situations or just master texts, but also see what the texts, how they speak to your soul, how they speak to your inner life, and how they enhance your consciousness, your awareness, your psychological acumen, and how it touches something beyond the mind, but the heart, the spiritual dimension that each of us contain.
What is the mission of the Academy for Jewish Religion?
The mission is to do outreach to all Jews, to promote harmony between the denominations, to allow people to master Jewish texts, to become scholarly, but mainly also to be an environment that's spiritual, meaning that some of the courses we offer, Hasidism, Musar, we have spiritual development groups every week. There's an attempt to create a spiritual environment in a rabbinical chaplaincy cantorial school that transcends just an academic environment.
Why do we need an interdenominational seminary? What's inadequate about having three major denominations?
Because then you have a split that generally the graduates of each of those schools have an affiliation and a loyalty to the values of that particular denomination, and sometimes it loses a larger picture of connection to the Jewish community as a whole and imbibing the strengths of each of the other denominations. So it creates a mentality